Hello, everyone. Joe Morton here for this edition of A Cup of Joe podcast. This is a podcast dedicated to all things health and wellness. I talk about three different pillars. Number one, exercise and fitness. Number two, diet and supplementation. And number three, the emotional, the psychological, the spiritual, the mental side of health and wellness. And I think this one encompasses all of it, really. If I could say that, in fact, I usually say that. Actually, it's kind of fun because I do believe they all come together. But this one, I want you to think about this word delusion and delusional. So if you look at the actual, okay, so I'll read the actual definition. This is an AI definition: holding a fixed belief that stubbornly persists despite clear objective evidence or reason to the contrary. And so that's just one definition. I mean, you'll find lots of different definitions, but that's one of them. And so I've used this quote quite a lot. I give the credit to Dr. Wayne Dyer. Change the way you look at things, and the things you look at change. Now, a lot of people have said something similar in different ways, but I'll give him the credit for that. We change the way we look at this, and like stubbornly persist despite it says holding a false belief and fixed belief. But I'm going to say that the world needs delusional visionaries. I'm going to call it visionaries, delusional visionaries. And I want you to consider and take note of your own dreams, your own aspirations, your own desires, and what you're trying to accomplish in life. And think about it from the perspective of almost delusional, but again, seeing that from a different perspective. Okay. So I want to read an ad that was an Apple ad from 1997. Steve Jobs and Steve Wozniak co-founded Apple Computer back in the day. I don't remember exactly when, 80s sometimes. And Steve Jobs, they built that to quite a successful company. And I remember the 80s having an Apple computer. In fact, my brother still has his version of it that he had back in the 80s, and we played video games on it. I say we. I don't really play a lot of video games on it, but my brother did and his friends. And so I bring this up because he ended up getting fired from the company that he actually co-founded, left, did a few other things, and then came back in the 90s to relaunch it because it started to struggle, of course. And he believed so strongly, and this was one of his first and a very, very impactful ad, and they called it Think Different. And I liked it. I'm just going to read the actual ad. And I may have quoted it before in one of the episodes, but I'm going to read it all the way through. Here's to the crazy ones, the misfits, the rebels, the troublemakers, the round pegs in the square holes, the ones who see things differently. And think about this word delusion, and think about seeing the world differently. Okay. The ones who see things differently, they're not fond of rules, and they have no respect for the status quo. You can quote them, disagree with them, glorify or vilify them. The only thing you can't do is ignore them, because they change things. They push the human race forward. While some may see them as crazy ones, okay, use that word delusional, we see genius, he says, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. And you can even switch out that word. The ones who are delusional enough, the ones who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Now, that's attributed to, of course, 1997 Apple Computer, but I give Steve Jobs really that credit. And this is a guy who literally ended up going on to change the world. We use iPhones. That changed the entire world. iPod changed the entire world of music. iTunes, everything to go along with it. And he was crazy enough to think that you can create a system where you have everything all in one ecosystem. And he did just that. And so I want to kind of highlight a few people who really did, who thought so differently, that like that ad says, we see them as genius, because the people who are crazy enough to think they can change the world are the ones who do. Now, I'm going to highlight one right off the bat. And I'm sure this comes to your mind. And if it doesn't, I'm going to bring it to your mind. And that's Dr. Martin Luther King. Now, it's hard to believe this speech, I Have a Dream speech, was written and delivered in Washington, D.C. in 1963. That's hard to believe when we look at the world that we're in today, that this I Have a Dream speech was so powerful at the day. Now, it's just as powerful today, but how this man with his vision and his, one could call the crazy vision of what the world can be here in the United States and the whole world. And yet he changed the way we see things. And again, take inventory of your own dreams and think about how do we see a world that others cannot see? Do we see dreams in your own life, almost to the point of delusion, where people say that's not possible? There's no way. There's no way that that's possible. And yet they change the world. Dr. Martin Luther King's uh, one of these, where he says, I mean, this is just so beautiful, where he says, I have a dream deeply rooted in the American dream. I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. Quote, we hold these truths to be self-evident that all men are created equal, end quote. Ooh, this one's powerful. Just think about this. I have a dream that one day out of the red hills of Georgia, the sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. And that is happening today, everyone. It's happening today. Again, we're not where we need to be, okay? We've got a long ways to go. Sure, there's always room for improvement. This is happening. This guy had a dream back in 1963 that this would happen. And he ultimately lost his life over this dream, and where he was trying to bring us as a nation and as a world. I love this. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream that my 4 children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day down in Alabama, with its vicious racists, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification, that one day right down in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with the little white boys and white girls, sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. So, excuse my emotion. And this is powerful stuff because people change the world. They change the direction of society entirely, because that is happening. That is happening. Again, do we have room to grow? Of course we do. But that very thing is happening. And we've watched it. And again, for those who are born in this century, maybe have a hard time even comprehend, well, why? What are we talking about here? Do we have room to grow? Yes, I will repeat that again. But wow, powerful, powerful. And he goes on, this is one of the most powerful speeches of all time that truly was a major catalyst for our nation and for the world. So I think of other people who were so, Henry Ford, for example. Gosh, Henry Ford, we think of the Ford Motor Company, and the Ford Motor Company is powerful. Yes. And it's one of the biggest automotive companies in the whole world. And started here in America, and it's gone all around the world. But did you know that he started two different car companies before the Ford Motor Company? Had to raise capital, the whole bit. And yet he continued on. He did not stop. He did not stop. And when he was told also that you can't do an 8-cylinder engine, boy, he just said, no, we're going to keep doing it. We're going to keep going and keep going and keep going until his team came back and said, we can do this. Never quit. So Elon Musk, I'm going to use Elon Musk as an example. Amazing. I read his book a while ago, and all we see is the richest man in the world. Okay, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world. But did you know he started PayPal, sold PayPal, made 180 or $200 million, some very, very large amount of money, but then and unfortunately went through a divorce, was on his own. He ended up investing all of his money into a car startup called Tesla and SpaceX, to the point where he had no money left, and he was living on someone's couch, I want to say, and borrowing money for rent. And he had to raise the capital to make sure that they did not go into bankruptcy, these two companies. And he was able to finalize that on, I want to say it's like Christmas Eve or something of 2008, 2009, somewhere in that range, and was able to bring the companies to where they needed to be. To now, SpaceX just went public. Of course, Tesla's been public for quite a while, and now he's the wealthiest man in the world. His net worth, of course, changes according to stock prices, but I mean, this guy was, one could say, delusional to think that he can do this. He's got other companies too, Neuralink and and the Boring Company and other things that he's planning on changing the world with. About Mahatma Gandhi, amazing spiritual leader and one who changed the course of history. He did it through nonviolence, nonviolent protesting, fasting, praying, and through, again, nonviolence, and was able to free people. And ultimately, also has lost his life over this. But I'm sure there were people saying, are you delusional? Are you crazy to think that you can make these changes? Then let's use another business example. So we'll kind of swap back and forth here a little bit. I think of Mark Hamill with Star Wars. I mean, he was an up and coming actor. 1977, Star Wars comes to market. Now we just knew it as Star Wars back in the 70s, and it's of course it's A New Hope now, and technically number 4. Movie number 4 in the series of Star Wars. But he took his salary, but then he also negotiated a deal of like, I think it's a quarter percentage point of the profits in the back end of Star Wars. Pretty smart move. Pretty smart move. Probably considered a bit crazy at the time. Probably considered a bit crazy to do this movie as well. And also George Lucas probably to roll the dice on such a massive project as well. And yet here we are today, and we have what we have, and all that entertainment, that half a century or so of entertainment that we've had through George Lucas's vision. And Mark Hamill, I'll use that as an example, aka Luke Skywalker, if you're wondering. And just a brilliant move. And while we're in that subject, how about Michael Jordan with Nike? If you haven't seen that movie, about Nike and Michael Jordan. Powerful, powerful movie. And one could say, are you delusional, Michael Jordan, for holding out? And his family was involved in that negotiation as well. And yet here he is, still having retired now. I don't know how many, decade and a half, 2 decades from the NBA, and I think he's making even more money now than he was back then. And because he was strong enough to believe, let's say, he was one of the as the Think Different says, one of the crazy ones to believe. We see him as genius, as he says. We see genius. And Michael Jordan, genius, absolutely genius to strike that deal. So I want you to, again, take inventory of your own dreams. If anything comes out of this podcast, just take inventory of your own dreams and how hard you're willing to work. Is it on the edge of delusion? Because delusion, unfortunately, has a bit of a bad connotation, but I'm asking you to look at it differently. Think differently, as the ad says. Think differently about this word and consider what we have today. And I propose that all entrepreneurs that start their companies and push and push and push are on the brink of delusional to bring something to the world that they can see, possibly that nobody else can see. Was it delusional of Tiger Woods to think that he can change the course of history with coming into the PGA and doing what he did? Incredible how he changed the entire PGA and the entire way that we see the sport. God bless him and all the other dreamers of the world that pushed through, that are, again, I'll repeat, considered them the crazy ones, and yet they changed the world. Grateful for the ones who truly do think different to the point of delusion so that we can have today what we have. Thank you for listening to this edition of A Cup of Joe podcast. I wish you an amazing day. Thank you very much.